to respond to allegations around Georgia's salary, and SADC assesses SA's readiness for the polls. A very good morning to you. The National Assembly Speaker has until next week to answer to
to the Powers and Privileges Committee to essentially stipulate that the committee needs to investigate, because we are of the view that the Speaker is likely to have misled Parliament. And if that is the case, then it is a very, very serious matter.
Looking now at your election news, the SADC Electoral Advisory Council has been assessing South Africa's political and security environment ahead of the country's elections in May. The Advisory Council and the SADC Observer Mission have been engaging with key players ahead of the polls to ensure free, fair, transparent and peaceful elections. The Council's chairperson, Advocate Nothemba Tipia.
We are still busy with our assessment, as we have not met all key electoral stakeholders, and we are yet to finalize our report. In that report, we will then give our overall assessment, which will be then forwarded to the chairperson of the organ Troika of SADC, the president of the Republic of Zambia that is chairing the organ at this moment.
The Commission of Inquiry into the building fire has heard that the building was not suitable for human habitation. The city of Joburg says the building is classified as an industrial building according to the Buildings Act. The fire at the hijacked building in the CBD claimed the lives of 77 people last year. Here's the city's Eric Raboshaga.
If there's a factory, can that factory be converted and just be used for regional purposes?
Absolutely not, Chairperson. So yes. There are processes that the scheme sets out to change the use. Yeah.
Now, just explain to the Commission then, what are those processes?
Chairperson, building plans must be submitted and approved, followed by the issuance of a occupation certificate by the city before those rights can be exercised.
Members of the Northwest Provincial Legislature are today expected to debate the State of the Province address delivered by the acting Premier Nunu Maloi last week. He highlighted the ANC-led government's achievements, which he says have benefited many residents in the province. Thabiso Moss reports.
Opposition parties in the legislature are expected to tear into Maloi's address, which has focused on improving provision of services. As several communities across the province are grappling with severe water shortages, Maloi has promised that they will complete most water infrastructure projects before the end of their next financial year. He also emphasized that they will improve health and education services by building more schools and clinics. Maloi is expected to respond to the debate on his State of the Province address next week. Thabiso Moss, SABC News, Mahikeng.
And an active-duty U.S. airman who set himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. in an apparent protest against the war in Gaza has died. Kate Fisher reports.
The airman has been identified as 25-year-old Aaron Bushnell of San Antonio in Texas. He filmed the protest, yelling "Free Palestine," and collapsed to the ground. In a live stream, he called the Israeli crackdown in Gaza genocide and said that what he was doing was not as extreme as the suffering of the Palestinian people. The Secret Service's Uniform Division extinguished the flames. The Air Force said that he had succumbed to his injuries and passed away on Sunday night. Kate Fisher, SABC News, Washington.
The top story this hour: the National Assembly Speaker has until next week to answer to allegations pertaining to the salary of Parliament Secretary Xolile George. For SAFM News, ke Modupi Makgalemele.
here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.6 FM in Bloemfontein. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Six after 10 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of the show. You're listening to The Talking Point. Coming up in this hour, we bring you special coverage of the Free State Investment Conference 2024. It's the investment conference that is set to showcase the Free State as a investment destination of choice and really highlight some of the various sectors and projects that are currently underway, and the call that is being made for potential donors to partner with the province in making these projects a success. So we'll bring you a number of officials from the Free State, including projects that are currently underway, geared mostly towards taking advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So all of that will be coming up over the next hour, where we'll be broadcasting also live from the Free State with those officials. Before we get to it, some of your WhatsApp voice notes from the open line.
Morning, Cathy. It's Mandla in Bushle Park. You know, it's so sad that in each and every ANC, whether it's a rally, manifesto, or celebration, there will be an accident of buses killing people. I wonder why. We have seen the EFF doing their rallies. We have never seen these kind of accidents. I wonder whether they will be able to investigate to see whether their drivers are always drunk when they are driving, or there's something beyond that. Thank you.
Good morning, Cathy. I was listening to this guy who was talking about only two types of political funding in South Africa, which is capital and corruption. I don't know why we keep doing this as South Africans. We somehow don't believe that capital can be corrupt. Then when capital is corrupt, we give them fancy names like accounting irregularities. We don't specify that. We don't say it's corruption as it's supposed to be. I don't know for what reason. So there's only one type of funding. If he says there are two types, there's only one type, and that is corruption. Finish and clap.
Cathy, hi. I see all these political parties, but the one that grabbed my attention is this one, MK, Jacob Zuma. Cathy, Jacob Zuma had full 9 years in power. He was leading close to 60 million people, but he failed to deliver. Now, it shows that he's greedy for power. There's a milk and honey when you are in power. So, and he's busy copying what Gaten McKenzie is saying, that when you finish matric, you are going to be a soldier. Jacob Zuma failed to do that, but he's mentioning it now. Skosan in Bloemfontein.
Oh, good morning, Cathy. You know, there's one thing which is shocking me. Everyone is talking about increasing grants. Are we a nation to become a welfare state? Why are they not bringing in strategies of creating employment? In other words, of encouraging that somebody who wants to become an entrepreneur, make doing business easier than converting the state into a welfare state. Isn't that a better strategy and a campaigning tool?
Good morning, Cathy. I don't have any problem about who fund our political parties, as long as funding it's legal. I may become a millionaire today, and I decide to fund any party that I like. I don't think that must be an issue, because it is my money and my choice. Thank you, Cathy.
Good morning, Mama. You know, politics by nature operates in that fashion, especially in a capitalist society like ours. Political parties are basically service providers of the owners of the means of production. They get the funding so that when they get into power, they can secure their interests. It's just how it operates. Whether they are being declared or not, it's neither here nor there, really. That is just how politics operates, unless, of course, we are going to be deliberate with the ideological foundations of our economy. Zwele speaks.
Good morning. Good morning, Cathy. I myself do not believe in coalitions, because I believe coalitions do not represent the will of the people. I believe in the winner takes all. That's what the will of the people means. If you win, you rule. That's what I believe in. Nakedi Krugersdorp.
#SFM Talking Point.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. Let's take you then to the Free State, where the investment conference is taking place today. It is the Free State Investment Conference 2024. Mr. Thabo Meeko is the MEC for Economic, Small Business Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. It's a mouthful. Good morning, and thank you so much for your time this morning.
Greetings. Thank you very much for having me. It is indeed a pleasure to talk to SAFM on behalf of the province on this very important subject.
Let's talk about the investment conference. It's a conference that you've been holding for a couple of years now. There's been the opportunity to sort of explore the terrain to see whether this is something that can work. Now that the conference is I think it's in its second year now. What do you think you've been able to achieve, and how are you able to position it differently this year than perhaps when you first started off?
Well, you are correct that this is the second installment of our provincial conference, essentially inviting entirety of the business community in our country, but critically the international community, to come and work with us in terms of our vision. How do we plan to build the economy of this province and by extension of our country, because there are linkages. No economy operates in isolation. We're very excited of the quick wins that were derived from the first installment. Economic conditions changed, and that's why we're convening the second one with a major focus on areas of agriculture. Free State is largely an agricultural province, as well as mining, in as much as there has been a decline. But we are exploring other alternative mining operations so that we upscale and ensure that the losses that we have encountered as a result of the closure of many mining operations are being recovered. Free State has recently discovered that we also have got a large deposits of gas within our shores. And I can indicate that this also flows from the first investment conference, and as well as that of the National Investment Conference convened by the President. That operation of gas exploration is in the second phase of its investment. Infrastructure has been set. Now we're looking into the processing of that particular gas. We're told that it's clean gas as well as helium. Very key, contains components which are very useful for a number of operations, and one of them is gas to energy, and the second one is the ability to process it in such a manner that we will manufacture the microchips and microconductors. We are aggressively engaging investment so that we can explore all those areas of our investment opportunities.
When you assess what happened at the investment conference last year, what was the general feedback that you took away from what business had to say about what the difficulties of doing business in the province are?
Well, the first thing, and we have been aggressively attending to it, and that's why part of planning for this work was to undertake international trips, engage the international community, sell the story of this province in terms of what is it that it can offer. But secondly, we have also rolled out a program to engage our municipalities. The issues of infrastructural development is quite very key to investment. We have also been unlocking the national government because there are a number of requirements which are their jurisdiction, so that then investment can be possible. But the investment conference today is then a pinnacle of that work we've been doing, and I think our anticipation is that up to so far, we're very excited that it's proceeding well, and the mood is the mood of people who are very excited to be here. And since yesterday, through a gala dinner hosted by DERCO, have indicated a huge interest to work with us and to achieve a mutually exclusive and beneficial relationship.
What do you find is often the question, MEC, that you have to answer most, that is asked of you by business, by potential investors, as you go about trying to sell the story of the Free State and why it must be the investment destination of choice?
Well, as indicated, I think the one uppermost is the infrastructure development, as it entails everything else from water to electricity to rail and road transport infrastructure, which issues are within the ambit of government to be able to attend to them, depending on its capacity with regard to the finances to attend to them. But there is a commitment on our part. The second one has been the issue of the cost of doing business in the Free State, as indicated that we have been aggressively in a conversation with both the local business as well as our municipalities with regard to this matter. And there's appetite on the part of municipalities to be amenable. We know that it has got to be a difficult balancing, because this also, is one very important revenue base of municipality. So we have to do the metrics and ensure that we achieve the balancing. That it will be very key that the province attracts new money into the province over and above what we are able to be allocated through the national fiscal allocation, which for our province it is quite not sufficient given the size of our population and other things, which are basing the national allocation. So we are attending to a myriad of all those areas to ensure that we succeed in hunting investment in our province and undertake some of this balancing, so that we attend to these high levels of unemployment in our province. We are fairly a rural province and quite vast, but there are also other advantages. We are located at the heart of South Africa. There are about 6 national roads which are crisscrossing our province, and in line with what the Premier said, we have been a sleeping giant that needs to be awakened, and all the efforts we are doing are intended exactly to exploit the opportunities which our province is commanding for the fullest benefits of its economy and its people.
You are trying to attract investment to your province in a climate where you're competing, at least from a South African perspective, against 8 other provinces, right? And you would have the economic hubs, your Gauteng, your Durbans, and Cape Town, that often, of course, tend to fare much better. Mangaung, in and of itself, has had a great deal of challenges over the last couple of years, and the state of service delivery, as you've well highlighted, has not been great. It has failed to meet the expectations of residents. It has failed to meet the expectations of business. So what is the competitive edge that you then sell to investors? Why bring their money to you instead of taking it to Gauteng or Western Cape or elsewhere in the country, wherever that might be?
Well, look, we are guided by the spirit that we are one country, and there's no need for competition except that we need to reinforce each other, given the peculiar conditions of these provinces. We think that uppermost for our province is our location at the heart of our country. We command huge potential to build capacity around the logistics. We have a special economic zone on the entry between Johannesburg and KZN, if you like, Durban. These are key strategic economic centers of our country, and we think that there's so much that we can leverage out of that. We are in the business of reconfiguring our entities. We've been crisscrossing this country, including the national leadership. I think we've had the 7th time engagement with the Department of Trade and Industry, the Deputy Ministers, who has indicated upon arrival today that he has got good news for us. One of the challenges that our special economic zone encountered challenges from history, and those have been unlocked, and we're looking forward to where the issues of funding for such a strategic asset will be on par, which will serve as an attractor of investment because of the tax incentives which we provide, and a strategic location on the entry next to Durban. One of the things that we can also build is the inland logistical harbour. Our visit to Singapore last year around October, where to learn around the nitty-gritties, the mechanics of the logistical harbours and the possibility of such inland, and that's one vision which we are pursuing. Yes, Mangaung had challenges. Mangaung is the economic hub of our province. If it sneezes, certainly the economy of the province will encounter flu. There has been an attendance to the challenges of leadership, and for a period of time now, they have stabilized. As a province, we are observing good developments, especially around attendance to the infrastructure, the road networks in particular. So we're quite very happy, but we're also, building capacity in other municipalities like Machabeng, in Velkom, and that's where the discovery of gas is situated. There are also plans to, build capacity around the cargo airport, as well as a number of renewable energy projects in the area of Bothaville. So it is the entirety of the R30 corridor from Bloemfontein right into northwest, crisscrossing our province, as indicated in terms of these road networks, which are constituting a strategic aspect of a consolidation of an agenda to build the economy. Yes, there has been challenges, but we are attending to that. We're happy that Mangaung has stabilized, and we also intend to build its capacity so that it can succeed to attract investment. We engage quite a number of international companies operating in Mangaung because it is an economic hub. Many of such are located here. Coca-Cola, SAB. We have been in constant engagement in terms of how they can hold hands with government and ensure that we are able to build the economy of Mangaung Municipality Metro and that of Bloemfontein. And the response has been very positive. We knew about the challenge of the cost of doing business because it arose out of those engagements, and we have earnestly attended to it, and we are inspired that indeed we are going forward.
Who are you expecting will perhaps be some of the biggest beneficiaries of the work that you're trying to do through this investment conference? Is it going to be big business? Are you creating avenues for small enterprises to also be able to benefit in what is the development really of the Free State? Because you're trying to create a development plan that is going to create its own economic centers going into the future.
Well, I think my example will sufficiently answer the question as opposed to a theoretical articulation. The investment at the gas exploration, which project I've indicated, arose from the first installment of our investment conference as well as the National Investment Conference by President last year, is going into its second phase, around 50 billion investment by the US government. It is a high-tech operation, so clearly the first phase, there was no expectation that it will create leverages for us with regard to massive employment creation as well as the beneficiation of the local economy. The second phase will entail the province and municipality has applied to national for yet another area to be designated, the second special economic zone, which will enable us to then build the industrial parks capacity. And that's where this gas will be processed. We're told that one of the things that will arise are the companies which are interested in glass manufacturing, as well as the tiles, who will benefit from that processing of that particular gas. Our expectation is that local business, both big and small, will certainly have to come on board and leverage, operate with this international investors. So a similar approach, whatever that will accrue from this investment conference, will find expression in municipalities on the ground where there's SMMEs, where there's our local businesses are contained. The third example, the special economic zone currently is housing about 4 investment. The first one is around 50 million. It's a poultry operation. And the downstream of such is where this investor is sourcing all the materials necessary for the poultry. They are buying pigs from all over the country, and we're saying, look, we recognize the reality that we're one country, but first and foremost, local business has got to benefit, and that's why we think that all the inputs towards their operations must be sourced firstly from our province, and of course, if there's no capacity, it can be extended to the rest of the country, because at the end of the day, economy cannot be compartmentalized. It is integrated and it operates in a manner that it reinforces each other everywhere in the country, and certainly we know now that the rest of the world.
All right. I've got a couple of callers that are coming through for you. I'm mindful of the fact that we're going to have to take the news headlines in a moment, so we'll do that on the other side of the 10:30 news headlines. But a lot of the plans that you're making, given how centralized they are within municipalities, they're going to rely a lot on the functionality of municipalities, to succeed. And as the provincial government, of course, there's only so much you can do when it comes to stabilizing the politics of municipalities. How do you plan on working around that, very briefly, before we go to news?
Look, we believe that the genesis of the challenges confronting our municipalities is the interrelated issues of overly regulated vis-a-vis the budget allocation to municipalities. Municipalities are located in the coal phase of service delivery. Naturally, our people have got expectations about everything, including those areas which are a competency of the province or national. Our people expect that municipalities must be able to deliver on those. So we think and believe that if the two can be attended, it will be an important root cause to attend to, and we think that the rest will then unlock. Surely others are a continuation. The issue of the leadership, and that's why the requirement to become a public rep have been altered drastically in terms of the requirements. We're placing a serious premium in terms of those requirements. People who command, particular basic qualification, people who command the high levels of morality, but people who love the poor, the people who love those who depend on government to ensure that there is service delivery. I know that the province is also looking into the issues of financial management by municipalities. Certain very strict measures have been imposed to ensure that we stabilize our municipalities. There are constant engagement between the province and municipalities. Premier has got what we call premier meeting with mayors from time to time. So that as and when the issues come, they're able to be attended at the same time.
Mr. Meko, I'm going to give you a chance after the latest news headlines.
A very good morning with the news headlines. The Transport Department in the Eastern Cape has condemned the closure of the N2 road between Dojwa and Butterworth, allegedly by angry protesters. The Speaker of the National Assembly has until next week to answer to allegations pertaining to the salary of Parliament Secretary Olile George, and Nigerian labor unions will embark on a 2-day strike today against the spiraling cost of living. I'll be back with all the details at 11.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point. Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
My name is Alan. I'm 71 years of age and I live in Douglasdale. I'm paying 554 Rand a month for my 2022 Nissan Magnite.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote. It's quick, it's easy, and it could save you hundreds of rands every month. Here's Amy.
To anyone who has not reached out to OUTsurance, what are you doing? Reach out today.
Blow your mind, not your paycheck. SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself why OUTsurance was voted Best Car Insurer 2023 by the Star and Pretoria newsreaders. Here's Yusuf.
It just shows that OUTsurance is top of the tops when it comes to insurers.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. OUTsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Nottingham Forest are navigating a path to the top half of the table.
Has to be a goal from Hudson. Yes! There we go! Get in there! Wrap it up against West Ham United.
While Liverpool focus on a massive strategy to be on the summit until the end of the season.
That's outstanding! Liverpool have turned the game on its head. McAllister's thunderous cross.
Experience the Premier League contest between Nottingham Forest FC and Liverpool FC on Saturday 2 March at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
All right, special coverage this morning of the Free State Investment Conference is the second one that the Free State government is convening, aimed at attracting investment to the province. There are several industries that they're going to be focusing on. We've been in conversation with the Free State MEC for Economic, Small Business Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, and Thabo Miko. He's still on the line. In fact, he's joining us from the ground at the investment conference. So, Mr. Miko, I've got some questions for you from our callers. I'm going to go straight to the phone line. Khojani, you're calling us from Kroonstad. Good morning, Khojani.
Good morning, Siskate. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So, this is happening not too far from where you are, Khojani.
Just a stone throw from Kroonstad.
Yes, yes. In your backyard.
Yes. I would like to first congratulate Thabo Miko. I've always known Thabo Miko as a humble leader, as a dedicated leader. And I believe if he can continue being the person I knew, I used to work with him. If he continues to be the person I knew then I think he will go a long way. That said, I was Cathy. I work in Kroonstad, and the question I'm asking is my personal question. It has got nothing to do with where I work. It is my observation that I see happening regarding Moqhaka municipality. So I just wanted to put that. It is my personal. I'm not talking on behalf of the municipality or on behalf of private sector or on behalf of anybody. That said, Moqhaka municipality, according to me, Sis Cathy, has always been sidelined in as far as the economic development is concerned. We had so many political leaders. Some of them have passed on, whom, according to me, never had good initiative or none whatsoever to develop Kroonstad and Moqhaka as one of the economic hub in the Free State. You look at our centrality as Kroonstad, as Moqhaka municipality. We've got the N1 here, we've got railway here, we've got water here, but we never had political decisions that are geared, to develop this area. It is like it is sidelined. It is like there is that political animosity that is towards this municipality. For example, right now, Ndadimeko has mentioned about the cargo that is going to Velcom. Velcom vis-a-vis Moqhaka, we are better off. We have got centrality of Kroonstad. We are central. We have got everything. We've got the land. Velcom does not even have a feasibility study. We have a feasibility study as a municipality. It was done in the past. I know it was done. We have got infrastructure. We have got airstrips.
All right.
And then why is it that Kroonstad has always been sidelined when it's come to economic issues?
Okay, Rojane, I'm sure he's noting your question. Give him an opportunity to respond in a moment. I wonder, though, if it is potentially that serious, animosity even, Rojane believes, a bit of tension that results in his municipality being sidelined. Bramoro, you're calling us from Bloem. Good morning, Bramoro.
Good morning. First time talking to you after a year.
Yes.
I expected you to be here today.
Welcome to Bramoro. It's a long story. I was supposed to be there today, but it's a long story for another day. Go for it.
Okay, you must invest in the Free State for us to forgive you for that, for not being here today. Firstly,
all right.
Let me applaud the team that are already here. I saw Sekina myself. My question to the MEC is, for us to invest, for us to call private citizens and migrants, especially in the international visitors, to probably invest in the Free State, we need to prepare the grounds to make it conducive. Our road network outside is good, but internally is full of potholes, which needs to be addressed. Some of us are committed to project the image of the Free State, especially Bloemfontein. But honestly, the central government is probably doing less or basically zero. It hurt us when we witnessed the international investment conference in Durban and the rest taking place in the Western Cape, Northern Cape, Durban to be precise. But the Free State are mostly rejected or sidelined. Honestly, today's event, if it was probably done over the weekend, I'm pretty sure we were going to get more publicity than this. Instead of even one day, today is just Tuesday, only a single day. Maybe I will appeal to the management to make it 3 consecutive days in the 3rd edition. And also, if possible, let us also invite the president also to bring his presence in the 3rd edition. Because if it has happened in the Western Cape or in Durban, he would have cancelled all his plans and availed himself. So why can't we have the presence of the president himself in the Free State? And lastly, our main target is developing the Free State, regardless of whichever city or whichever municipality. But I'll humbly appeal to the management of the Free State. Can they also set up a target to say, if you're a resident of the Free State and you're able to bring an investor, maybe there's a certain amount of appreciation that probably the province has set up. Maybe if, let's say I, a resident of the Free State, if I'm able to bring an international investor to invest in the Free State, there's going to be a certain incentive in terms of waiving of tax, waiving of permit, etc. Some of we migrants, we struggle to invest in the country due to a lot of red tapes that our Home Affairs brings in the central government.
Okay.
So if maybe the MEC and the Free State can come together to waive certain conditions. Honestly, some of us are more than willing to bring a lot of investors.
All right, Bramoro. Thanks for that. Bramoro is in Bloemfontein, and of course, this conference is taking place at the University of the Free State. Paul, you're in Mangaung. Good morning.
Thank you, Cathy. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Paul. Go for it.
I want to ask your guest there, what's the difference of our gas exploration here in Belcom and the other one in Bloemfontein? What's the difference in Beaufort West? What's the difference? Because the one in Bloemfontein, the people, they say that the Greenpeace people, they say that if you flick that gas, people gonna die. So this one of Welcome, what's the difference on it? I rest my case. Thank you. I will listen to the radio.
All right, okay. Thanks for that, Paul, out in Mangaung. Mr. Meko, do you want to come in and answer some of the questions that have been coming through?
Look, let's start with the last question. And I must confess that I'm not an expert. As leadership, we certainly subject ourselves to the expert advice. And this is what we were told. And of course, I must say that indeed it does make sense. There are, of course, different types of gases. Others are, legally required for local use. Others can only be, an industrial for industrial usages. And I think this is the difference that what we've been exposed to, the type of knowledge we've been exposed to. But we are, and this is what the Premier is very passionate about, we are now focusing in ensuring that we discover exactly what is it that Free State is able to offer with regard to all these economic opportunities, starting from the mineral resources, including other opportunities for exploitation in the interest of the economy. We're historically been told that we're the province of agriculture and mining only. And I think by accident, gas was discovered. And then we occasioned a study working together with the University of the Free State as well as the Department of Geoscience to ensure that, there's a full appreciation of what is it that we have and of course, how can we exploit that to the benefit of our people, our economy. Just as a, from on top of my head, what I have been able to capture is that there's a type of gas which is called methane, and there's another one which is called helium. In Welcome, the discovery there and what has been explored largely is helium, and I think clean gas called LNG. These are high technical areas, but we can only summarize is that obviously, the expert needs to come in and make a declaration that this will be dangerous for human usage. He is correct that indeed, there are other indications where, there's been explosions which were not intended, and it is as a result we're told, of these chemical reactions of these different types of gas, from helium to methane. Number two, Bramoro, let's welcome the advice, but also indicate that at this conference, I think we have about 3 deputy ministers as well as Minister of Electricity, and it arises from the National Investment Conference, which successfully was convened by the President, as provinces were crystallizing, both the spirit of that, but such investment which were directed towards our province, there are quite many. We have been pursuing for a number of years now the implementation of such. You would know the character of investment. It's money which you must buy. Investors also have got investor interest, and all of those must be located within the law and the spirit of the law. Yes, there has been challenges as well, as I indicated, at Mangaung Metro. There has been an intervention done at a political level. There's a new leadership now in office, I think, for 2 to 3 years, and we have observed stability. We did, as a Department of Economic Development, the first thing that we did was to engage municipalities. We had a lineup. We met with Moqaka, and Tato Khojana will indicate the content. We met with Machabing, including the Metro. And we engaged, the conversation was around the role that a province must play at the cooperation between the province and municipalities, so that we can strengthen governance capacity to be able to respond to some of these complex issues of development. And there has been some interventions at the level of the leadership of the municipality, as I indicated. And we are jointly now undertaking a planning of how the economy of Mangaung can be strengthened, can be developed. One of the things, if I may have to make an example, which we derived from the National Investment Conference, we met with AXA, an association responsible for our airports, and we succeeded to secure, I think, about 100 million or so for the upgrade and development of the airport in Bloemfontein. We are in conversation about a zoo that had problems at some point, and by the law had to be closed. We are reviving that particular zoo because we think that it is in the area of tourism, an economic driver of the Free State, which finds expression as well in Mangaung.
Right.
So there are a number of initiatives which we have undertaken along these plans of building the economy of the Free State. And Tate Khojane, thanks very much with the congratulatory messages. We've also met with the municipality of Moqaka. They did indicate their plans around the cargo airport, and we explained that the basis for the cargo in Velcom is as a result of the economic development on the R30. That gas exploration is the main reason why we think that it will be strategic. Nothing stops the Moqaka municipality as well, given its leverage of being on the N1. When we talk about the centrality of Free State in terms of the country, we're talking about Kroonstad and Bloemfontein, which that principle is finding expression. And we're continuously engaging them to say, bring on board any other thing for cooperation so that the province can help you for the development of those economic opportunities.
We've got quite a few other listeners that want to engage with you, Mr. Meko, so we'll give them a chance to do that. Before we get to that, or before we continue, however, with the conversation, we're going to take a quick break.
The Portfolio Committee on Public Works and Roads Community Safety and Transport Management will conduct a public hearing on Marine Pollution Amendment Bill and Transport Appeal Tribunal Amendment Bill on the 29th of February 2024 at Madiboho Community Hall in Madiboho, Naka Mudirimulema District, Ching Community Hall Extension 4 in Vennesdorp, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, Hamariba Tribal Hall in Morukwenya, Dr. Ruth Sohomosi Mumpati, Letlabile Community Hall in Letlabile, Buchanala District. All hearing starts at 10 in the morning.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Why are you now taking the South African Council of Educators to court? What do you believe they did wrong here?
We've noticed a pattern in the Council of Educators where they're giving out really, really lenient sentences for corporal punishment, even in cases where it amounts to severe assault. We're taking the Council of Educators to court to change these practices by reformulating their mandatory sentence guidelines, and we're asking them to reconsider the sentences given out to 2 teachers who were found guilty of pretty severe instances of corporal punishment, and that's why we're at the Supreme Court.
Thank you very much indeed. Mila Harding's a legal researcher at Section 27.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m.
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as international dance sensation Musa Mota fires the imagination of millions. Film star Zandile Mhlangu brings the action off screen as much as on. And of all the wedding venues in the world, why did Dr. Carly Andringa and Paul van Dyk choose Antarctica? Find out on the Insider SA this Monday at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10:30 on S3.
Some say, amadoda ayipheli. Others are saying, X ongasoveli. Black and white tackles gold and black in the DStv Premiership. This is the Soweto Derby, Mzansi's biggest football jamboree. Sazoshuba, Amapagania versus Amakhosi on Saturday, 9 March at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're bringing you special coverage of the Free State Investment Conference. It's taking place at the University of the Free State. It's the second installment of this conference. Thabo Meeko is the Free State MEC for Economic, Small Business Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, and he's joining us live on the show. So many of you calling in that want to engage with him. So here's what I'll do. Let's take some of the WhatsApp voice notes that have come through, and then we'll go to the phone lines to get your questions. Please keep those questions as brief as possible.
Good morning, Sis Cathy. Sis Cathy, how will people or big businesses will invest in the Free State? Because I know for sure in the Free State, like, there are potholes, rubbish has not been collected. It's same as our area in Willowvale in the Eastern Cape, because we are surrounded by oceans, but there is no development or investment because of the state of the roads in our province. So investors are not willing to invest. Thanks from Andy in Willowvale. Bye.
Oscar, good morning. What the MEC is actually saying or telling us today is far-fetched. If you look at what is happening in Malutiapofong with regard to the SEZ, that project is absolutely dead. Nothing is happening there. Every time when there is a state of the province address, they keep on mentioning this SEZ. But in reality, nothing is happening. You cannot attract investors when you do not have electricity. If you check the area closer to that SEZ, Tiame, every time towards December, they struggle with a band, electricity, what do you call this thing? With the electricity transformer. So there is nothing that will happen there. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Meeko, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, quickly. It is true that SEZ, is a designated brown area, had challenges. Their challenges arose from the problems of the municipality. You would know that the area of Kwakwa is a very difficult area for development, given the topography and all of that, historically, even long before load shedding. That municipality had challenges of water as well as electricity. It's not only electricity, as well as water. And that's why there has been these plans to try and resolve the problem of that municipality. And one of them, what is a grand plan to try and source water as far as Lesotho, which obviously requires billions and billions. It is an issue which we're continuously pursuing it. But it has affected, obviously, the special economic zone, which is located within that particular municipality. But it's not true that there's nothing happening. Yes, there are challenges. Currently, we've got about 4 international investment operating within that, and we've got about 12 in the pipeline which are ready. One of the things that the department has done was to refurbish the factories in the special economic zone. But as well, to augment the capacity of the special economic zones to be able to build its own capacity with regard to renewable energy. The solar panels, manufacturing of it, and the installation for the operations of the factories there. Part of the plans as we approach the new financial year, is to check to what an extent can we be able to intervene with regard to the issue of water what are the alternatives and how far will the budget be able to carry us. So we're looking into those things so that one, we don't experience disinvestment, but two, we then convert this pipeline into actual investment in the special economic zone.
All right.
True. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying the issue of the potholes, we did indicate about it through Mangaung as an example, that indeed there's focus. There is commitment on the part of provincial government to help municipalities to attend to the issues of the infrastructure. As a whole, potholes being part.
Washington, you're in Kroonstad. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Cathy. You're speaking to Munna Silo, Washington Mukhuji. I was impressed by what Dada Khojani said, although I've not met him. But I just want to ask Dada Meko, in his office, that is Economic Affairs, as well as in Mukaga municipality, there lies a business plan that I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, but I compiled that business plan in 2000 when the Free State and all other provinces met here to position our provinces economically for the new millennium. In my business plan, I talked about the cargo airport we have in Kroonstad to be developed, the goods shed to be developed. We have a power station that has gone, that was nearly sold, is still standing, and then the Kroonstad station to be revamped into a turntable, although it's now used as a shebeen. I can tell you about the Kroonstad station. The Chinese approached me. We were in Bloemfontein eating at Glass Palace. They approached me during that very same afternoon, saying they wanted to know West Kroonstad. They are interested in the station as well as the cargo airport, so that we should alleviate. My main aim was to alleviate gazine from containers that are traveling from Durban to, they must be brought to Kroonstad goods shed. Then they can go to the Eastern Cape and the Northern Cape because and Northwest, because we are in the middle. That is my business plan that I presented. It was so much appreciated. Even Trevor Manuel was very much taken up with that thing. But as I'm telling you now, Kroonstad is what it is today, a ghost town, because nobody wanted to implement that because they felt they did not like Kroonstad. So I want to know what Datemeko going to do about that.
Okay.
That's my key.
All right, Washington. We've got one more caller, but I don't think we've got time to take him. Daboho, you're a farmer in Bloemfontein. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. What I wanted to say to Datemeko is that I'm a small-scale farmer in the Bloemfontein area. I specialize in lucerne and also some soya beans on a small scale. I'm doing everything else out of my pocket. I've been trying to get a hold of Mr. Meko's office for the past year and a half, in terms of now the national parks, in terms of now seeing how best we can supply and make sure that we in the agriculture sector, we can be able to supply the lucerne. And I've heard that during my research, there's a very good appetite of the Chinese people that are interested in the lucerne farming. And I'm currently doing that on a small scale. I'm based in Bloemfontein myself, and I would love for Mr. Meko, please, if possible, to make his office accessible, so that we as people who want to participate into the agriculture of the province can be recognized as well. So that is my fair comment at point in time. Thanks, Kate.
All right. Thanks for that, Teboho. Mr. Meko, 40 seconds for me, please.
Well, quickly, this one, a bloom farmer, which we appreciate, even if it's a small-scale farmer. Let me apologize and appreciate the challenges of how our SMMEs are struggling to be in contact with their own government. We're trying to build a digital capacity where by the click of a button, an SMME who is 200 km away from Bloemfontein, where the provincial department is located, is able to communicate with government. So we're about to conclude that, and certainly I'm sure it will give many the opportunity to be able to communicate with the... Let's appreciate that Washington, for the courage and resilience from 2000 up until now. The spirit of building the economy of his province is still there. He is correct. There is electricity power plant in Kronstadt. There is a very massive railway station infrastructure. It is part and parcel of our plans. Look, you must understand that some of these discoveries, some of these economic opportunities, we discovered that in one of our districts, we command the second highest solar radiation index after Northern Cape, our sister department here. And we've been inundated with many interest around building solar capacity in our province. And these are the projects that we're engaging. There's many of them from our province, and surely that will be a catalyst.
All right.
The very gas in itself becomes a catalyst to provoke other areas of the economy to be revived or to be inaugurated from the beginning. So there's a relationship between developments, the discovery, and the fact that we need to build capacity in the downstream.
All right.
So that comprehensively we can have an integrated plan that builds the economy of the province.
Mr. Meko, we're going to have to leave it there for this morning. He's the Free State MEC for Economic, Small Business Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, and of course at the Free State Investment Conference. And this conversation was brought to you by the Free State Investment Conference.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top stories at 11. Protesters close the N2 in the Eastern Cape and labor unions go on strike in Nigeria. A very good morning. The Transport Department in the Eastern Cape has condemned the closure of the N2 road between Dujwa and Butterworth, allegedly by angry protesters. Traffic has been brought to a complete standstill on this road. The protesters are believed to have used a truck to completely block both lanes of this important route, leaving workers and learners stranded while the cargo is also stuck on the road. Provincial Transport spokesperson Unatibi Ngosi says the reason for the protest is unknown at this stage, but law enforcement officers are on the scene to try and clear the road. He has urged motorists to use alternative routes.
Law enforcement officers are on the ground trying to get the road reopened and traffic flowing again. Transport MEC Xolile Nqatha has condemned the action of the protesters, saying that however legitimate their grievances may be, but their actions have shown complete disregard for the masses of our people who now find themselves stranded on the side of the road, and that such action will not be tolerated.
The Speaker of the National Assembly has until next week to answer to allegations pertaining to the salary of Parliament Secretary Xolile George. The Speaker is accused of unilaterally increasing his salary by 70% following his appointment in June 2022. George's annual package went up from an advertised 2.6 million to a whopping 4.4 million rand in less than a year, earning more than the President. DA Chief Whip Sivuya Kwahube says this is a serious matter.
Now discovering that there was a unilateral salary hike is the reason why we have reported the matter to the Powers and Privileges Committee to essentially stipulate that the committee needs to investigate, because we are of the view that the Speaker is likely to have misled Parliament. And if that is the case, then it is a very, very serious matter.
The body corporate of blocks of flats in Mahikeng in the northwest is facing threats of illegal occupation. This after a group of unknown people forced their way into the property formerly known as Kirhomoditswe Flats, demanding to occupy the vacant flats, alleging that the property was owned by government and illegally occupied by the current residents. According to the body corporate, however, the apartments were transferred to private owners by the Northwest Housing Corporation in 2007. Tapelo Mokhadi is with the Kirhomoditswe body corporate.
They told us that they've done their research. They know that this property belongs to the government. So they also want a piece of the slice. We told them that we own and we also have documentation. We had a meeting with 5 of them who said they are the representatives. We had a list of all the owners from the deeds office. They became rowdy, throwing stones and bottles at us. We asked for intervention from the South African Police Services, even with our private security company.
Attempts to locate the group in question were unsuccessful. In a written statement to our news desk, the Northwest Housing Corporation confirmed that the ownership of the property has been under private ownership and management since its transfer back in 2007. And the Nigerian labor unions will embark on a 2-day strike today against the spiraling cost of living. It's not clear how many workers will take part in the strikes, as many accuse the unions of corruption. More from the BBC's Mayeni Jones.
But there's no doubt that Nigerians have a lot to protest against. Inflation is at almost 30%, and food inflation is higher still. The value of the local currency, the naira, is the lowest it's ever been, making imports more expensive. Combine that with an acute electricity shortage and soaring temperatures, and it might explain why the African Development Bank has warned of an increased potential for social unrest. The government is trying to send a message that it's handling things and has promised to reduce public spending. But many Nigerians blame the current administration for making drastic economic reforms, including removing a popular fuel subsidy without proper planning.
The top story this hour, the Transport Department in the Eastern Cape has condemned the closure of the N2 road between Dujwa and Butterworth, allegedly by angry protesters. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Bafana Bastard remember what transpired in Lubumbashi when they went down by a goal to 0 against the Ravens. They want to ensure their visitors walk away with sad faces when they meet in the final group stage contest. However, the DRC outfit are confident of another upset. This is the CAF Champions League. Catch Mamelodi Sundowns versus TP Mazembe on Saturday 2 March at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, it's 8 after 11 o'clock. We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. Welcome to the third and final hour of the show. So coming up in this hour, we're taking a look at coalition governments. How do we strengthen coalition governance in the country? And it's going to be part of deliberations at a seminar that is being hosted alongside the South African Local Government Association and the United Nations Development Programme. All of it in a bid to really understand some of the challenges that coalition governments in the country have been going through and what is really needed to address some of these challenges. Well, let me get straight into our guests and welcome onto the show Bongani Madumela. He's Manager for Governance at the United Nations Development Programme in South Africa. Bongani, good morning to you. Good morning, Bongani. All right. We don't have Bongani on the line. Let me welcome Lance Jewell, who's the Chief Operating Officer of the South African Local Government Association. Lance, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and as well to the listeners, and thank you for having us.
Let me then also welcome Pindile Kunene, who is Program Manager for Democracy and Political Culture at the Frederick Ebert Stiftung. Pindile, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy. It's great to be on the show.
Firstly, let's talk about where we are when it comes to trying to deal with the challenges that coalition governments seem to have presented, especially for South Africa. When we look at ourselves versus what is happening elsewhere in the world, Lance, are we the exceptional case? Are we the only country that is really facing these difficulties? I don't want to say that, it's necessarily a failure of coalition governments, but certainly there have been challenges.
Well, Cathy, once more, good morning. We are not the exception, Cathy. I think our biggest difficulty as a country is that whilst coalition governments are not new, we have had coalition governments since the first democratic local government election in the year 2000, and every single election thereafter we had coalition governments. So it's not new. But what is absent is the presence of a regulatory framework, meaning that there is no guidance given to political parties around the formation as well as the sustainability of coalitions, and in many other countries that finds expression. So in the absence of that guidance, it creates a chaotic state of affairs, and it essentially allows the parties to make up things as they go along. So that is the instability that is created, and it's an area that we hopefully would want to address when we have this conversation over the next 2 days.
Ideally, Pindile, where should the guidance be coming from? Again, this is largely new terrain for the country, and not new in the sense that we're new to coalition governance, but rather that the kind of challenges that we have been having, those are new. Municipalities in some instances are experiencing some of these problems for the very first time.
Yeah, thanks, Cathy. I think it's out of that recognition that as FES we then decided to support the Mistra Coalition's Barometer, which had its first volume sort of released last year, the high-level summary. And the aim of that really was just to take stock of what's been happening at metropolitan level, at local municipality level, from all those all those hung councils after the 2021 local government elections. It's important, I guess, to learn from international experience, but we also have concrete experiences emerging out of our own country, and it's important to take stock of some of the trends, some of the dynamics that are emerging out of that. A key question for us at FES has always been, how do we measure success of coalitions? Is it through looking at which of those municipalities or which of those governance arrangements are still the founding governance arrangements, meaning the original coalition partners still holding it together, or is it the extent to which coalitions are accountable to the electorate and the extent to which parties deepen discussions within their own structures about coalitions, so that the discussion is more democratized as opposed to just being driven by parties alone with their own interests?
Often we have seen challenges when it comes to bringing political parties together, even to agree on a framework of how coalitions should be governed. It becomes a really big and sometimes possibly controversial talking point for political parties. What do you find, Pindile, are the biggest inhibitors to this conversation of a framework that can guide coalitions rather?
I mean, I suppose this was quite evident last year in August with the national dialogue on coalition governments that took place in Cape Town, because almost all the 14 parties that were present there had some sort of reluctance with regards to some of the proposals on the table. So the issues are varied, really. The smaller parties sort of feel like they are being punished for what is seen as instability, especially around the metropolitan areas. So they see proposals that are aimed to sort of make coalitions more stable. They see those proposals as targeting them because those proposals speak to things like thresholds and so on. But I think what's also important to underscore is that there are two ways we can look at coalitions, right? Sometimes coalition parties seek out coalitions because they seek power, they seek office, and so enter into agreements, enter into negotiations from that standpoint. Another view is when parties actually seek seek coalitions out of policy concerns or wanting to gain some sort of demands or issues, or wanting to center some of those demands or issues. What we've seen, and this is certainly what the coalitions barometer underscores, what we've seen in our context is that parties are very much about the power game, and policy proposals, policy demands sort of take the backseat. There are various ways through which we can change that. Part of that is learning as we go along, as we are on this journey, but part of it is also about introducing pressure points. And by pressure points, I mean that the electorate itself needs to act in such a way that recognizes that there is a political opening that has been, that there are opportunities presented by coalitions, and therefore we can't navigate the political terrain as if we are still in the context where absolute majorities were sort of guaranteed at the polls.
Let me invite Bongani Matomela, who is the Manager for Governance at the United Nations Development Programme. He's on the line. Bongani, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Cathy, and morning to the listeners.
I'll come to you in a moment, but Lance, just again on this issue of the difficulties that the idea of a framework is facing. As SALGA, of course, you have the opportunity of interacting in particular with municipalities in a way that other stakeholders don't. Through the formal structures where you're able to engage with political parties, officially so across the spectrum, what has prevented, let's say, SALGA from leading the conversation on needing a framework to govern coalitions? Hello, Lance?
Cathy, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you now.
Yes. No, as I was saying that, in fact, SALGA was taking the lead in these discussions. Prior to the 2021 elections, we had done an assessment of the state of affairs in coalition-governed municipalities from 2016 up to 2021. And we concluded that there is an absolute need for, or an urgent need for, a framework. And we developed that framework. We, in fact, went into the elections with this framework in hand and started engaging political parties. What the framework attempted to do, and I should give credit that this framework was developed in partnership with the Dula Oma Institute from the University of Western Cape. And we used this framework to interact with political parties. And in essence, two areas we were trying to guide political parties on. Firstly, how to go about in establishing coalitions. And secondly, once you've established a coalition, how do you sustain that coalition? Because it's also important that once you've reached agreement, you also put processes in place that will, on an ongoing basis, assess how this coalition is functioning. We issued that guiding framework to political parties. It was up to political parties to then decide whether they want to adopt the approach as guided by SALGA or not to. We have seen instances where political parties have chosen to take some of the issues that we have raised in our framework and implement them. We've seen that, in fact, translating into stability in some coalition government municipalities. So the point that we are making is that there are 83 coalition government municipalities in the country, of which only 30 of them are unstable. The majority, in 53 of them, are stable coalition government municipalities, and stable because they have also taken into account some of the advisory notes that came through the guiding framework developed by SALGA. So it does require, so there is a framework, it's voluntary, but we think it must now find expression through legislation so that it doesn't allow the discretionary approach, but it obliges political parties to follow the direction that is given to them through the legislation. And that's an urgent need that we need to address.
Bongani, what do you, as the UNDP, as your role in this conversation?
Well, as the UNDP, we have the responsibility to ensure and assist the country to realize its national development objectives and also contribute to the attainment of the global sustainable development goals. And for us, good governance is a very key element to ensuring that this happens. We have been watching the developments in the country, particularly since 2016 local government elections of coalition government that have come into fruition, and some of the challenges that these governments have encountered. When we've realized that something needs to be done in terms of almost providing some kind of support to the country, working with partners like SAGA and FES that have done a lot of research in this area to ensure that we help the country towards the process of developing a kind of a framework that will be agreed by all the partners. We have arranged and organized this seminar together with these partners with a view to get more voices to the discussion and the debate. And it very much follows from the national dialogue that was hosted by the presidency last year. But we are continuing with the conversation with a view that we can contribute to the shaping of an eventual framework or even legislation for that matter. So we are bringing in the voices not only of the usual players in this discussion. We are bringing in the voices of communities. We are bringing in the voices of organized labor, the voices of organized business, because they are the ones that get directly affected by instability or otherwise in local government. So we really want to tease out the issues around the kind of policy and legislation that possibly can be explored by the country, what kind of nature of the agreement that need to be put in place, and how should that process be managed, and also, more importantly, the voices of the communities and the voters to ensure that political parties and other players do not actually enter into agreement that are not really in line with the choices and of the voters as well. So we want a situation where all the parties over the 1.5 days on the 28th and 29th to have a discussion on that with the view that we can all contribute to the shaping of a framework that is appropriate and fit for purpose for South Africa.
Pindile, it's great to have this diverse these diverse views on the issue of coalitions. But of course, at the end of the day, as Lance was saying, if there is no buy-in from political parties at this point to voluntarily bring in some of the advice that is there in the existing frameworks, then not much will happen. How do you ensure that the work that is being done by academics, by leaders in communities, also finds expression within political parties, and that they are able to take it on and champion it themselves?
Thanks, Cathy. I suppose with supporting the coalition's barometer, our hope was sort of twofold. That the findings emerging from this study that looks at these metropolitan and local municipalities over a certain period would be then useful as something to be taken into party structures, into organizations, to have a discussion about what guides parties in their engagement with coalitions. What accounts for stability? Does stability necessarily translate to responsiveness to voters, to citizens, and so on? So that's on the one level, an engagement that is aimed at political parties as stakeholders. The second one goes back to the point I raised about the pressure points. Now, we believe that the electorate has a vital role in ensuring that coalitions are accountable to the citizenry. And so far, I mean, things are sort of changing. We are learning along the way. But I mean, it's been our analysis as well that there hasn't been that much of an engagement about how to exploit this political opening that comes with coalition governments. Elections, by their very nature, are an opportunity for the citizenry. It's the one time probably where politicians are very interested in listening and in hearing what voters have to say. So we are interested in how voters can be sort of pressure points, and that's why we also support spaces where voters can sort of gather and think through their own demands going into the election, and then think about how to center those demands in the party manifestos, but also in the discussions that parties are going to be having with each other on coalitions. I suppose the big question is, can voter collective power end the practice where power is negotiated and shared between elites to the exclusion of citizens? What the coalition barometer shows is that the formal agreements at municipal level around coalitions are very few and far between. Where you do find them, they're mostly about positions. They're not about policy. They're not about voter concerns. They're not about the needs and wants of the residents of a particular area and so on. So it's how we use the data that emerges from the coalition's barometer as a mobilizing tool as well, to say that, hey, coalitions are not just about parties alone. We also matter as citizens and as voters. So that's really our hope. And that's why I suppose the program for the next 2 days also features those community voices and the citizens' voices quite prominently.
Lance, this conversation, of course, in the election cycle that we're in, and an election that is likely to be the most contested since democratic South Africa, but also where there is all sorts of projections, looking at some of the research that is coming out that says that we could well need a coalition government to be in place at a national level for the very first time. What does that then mean for these kind of conversations? We don't have a framework that governs coalitions at a local level. What impact is that going to have for potential coalitions at a national level?
Well, Cathy, I think a key outcome of our own assessment on the coalitions that find expression at the local government level is that whilst, yes, there are a large majority where there is stability, unfortunately, it is in those bigger municipalities where there's instability. So in the smaller municipalities, the practical experience shows that there's more stability. But in the bigger ones, there is instability. Now, if that finds expression at the provincial and at the national level, I think we are in for a very interesting 5 years post the elections, because the same instability that finds expression at the local government level is likely also to find expression where there's no outright winner in a province, where there's no outright winner at the national level. You can imagine, Cathy, as we see in municipalities that are led through coalitions, every month there's an item on a vote of no confidence. Now imagine that the provincial legislatures are focusing on vote of no confidence into a premier every single month. What happens to services that ought to be delivered by provincial government in the same way services are to be delivered by local government when there is a question mark put on the head of a mayor and a speaker, and that will also translate into a premier and a provincial legislature speaker. So in the absence of a regulatory framework, and I think, Cathy, to be fair, we had sufficient time to respond to this, having the benefit of the experience at the local government level. But unfortunately, we are going into the elections without such a framework, so we are likely to emerge with the same difficulties that find expression at the local government level. Sad, but indeed that is a reality that faces us. Perhaps things may not turn out that way, but from where we stand, from listening to what is predicted, we may have difficulties. And so this conversation remains a relevant and necessary, but importantly, a very urgent conversation that should result in concrete proposals that will, going forward, guide coalition governments.
We'll continue the conversation in a moment. It's 11:30, time for your latest news headlines.
For the headlines at 11:30, I am Dino Motaung. Good morning. South African Revenue Service Commissioner Edward Kieswetter will stay in office for an additional 2 years. This follows President Cyril Ramaphosa extending the term of office for the commissioner. In other news, a motorist has drowned while attempting to cross a flooded subway bridge in Brakpan on Gauteng's East Rand. And the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations says Benin has offered 2,000 troops to support a planned international force to help tackle armed gangs in Haiti. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation on the Talking Point. How do we strengthen coalition governance in the country, and how do we develop some kind of framework that can guide these coalitions, that can at least be part of official government policy, so that if we need to have coalitions, whether at local, provincial or national level, we are comfortable with the fact that there are rules of engagement that all parties will be bound by. Pindile Gunene is Program Manager for Democracy and Political Culture at Frederick Ebert Stiftung. Bongani Matomela is the Manager for Governance at the United Nations Development Program, and Lance Joel is COO at the South African Local Government Association. So, Bongani, ultimately, it's not just about the buy-in from the different stakeholders that should contribute to the conversation, but it's also about saying, how do we move it from what is held at seminars like the one taking place over the next 2 days to becoming policy, government policy?
Indeed, I think our hope over the next 2 days is very robust discussions and deliberation in terms of how we can take this forward, and we are hoping that the deliberations and discussions that will come out of the seminar will contribute to the development of the framework to the extent possible and needed the legislation. Of course, we are bringing in all the experts that have done a lot of work and research in this area to give us insight and to facilitate these discussions, but also we are trying to bring in some experiences from other countries as well, that have dealt with coalitions at all levels of government, and also how to manage political diversity as well. Countries such as Germany, countries such as Kenya as well. So that's basically the idea, that this will be a contribution to the emerging framework. So we structured the discussion in such a way that we are very specific on some of the salient issues that we need to be discussing and come to some kind of a consensus, or if you do not come to a kind of agree that these are the issues that should be discussed and finalized further. So our objective is to ensure that this is a contribution towards the development of that particular framework, whether it's in a form of a voluntary framework or in a form of a coded framework to guide how the coalitions can work better.
Pindile, as we get ready to wrap up this conversation, what for you would constitute success at the end of the seminar?
I mean, for us, I do believe that the fact that these conversations are happening is in and of itself a point of success, something that we can use as a point of success. Our goal has always been to broaden this discussion beyond the political parties, so that coalition making, coalition politics, coalition arrangements are not just the business of parties. In as much as parties are important, because in a way they are our link to the democratic state, they've got supporters, they've got constituents, they run for elections and so on. But the discussion it can't be that the discussion is just limited to parties alone, and civil society has got a very important role to play in this regard. I think what would also count as success would be hearing from international case studies. And for us, it's important to think of international case studies not just as Western Europe or European case studies. It's important to take stock of what's been happening in Lesotho. I mean, in Lesotho, there were parliamentary elections in 2012, 2015, 2017, no outright winner. In all those instances, coalition governments are formed, they collapse even before the 5-year term. So Lesotho has actually walked this path, and it would be important to sort of study what's been happening there. Namibia is also grappling with its own coalition dynamics, so to share notes and to learn from each other. And this point cannot be overemphasized, because in a way, this emphasis on international case studies has tended to privilege European countries, and so you get the popular refrain then that, well, I mean, our situation is quite different. Our history of colonialism, our history of apartheid actually precludes successful coalition making. So it's important to actually learn from each other as countries in the global south about what makes coalitions successful, as well as what pressure from below can do to foster accountability and responsiveness to the electorate.
Lance, in order to have this pressure for below, it also begins with getting citizens to understand the importance of their voice in these conversations. Already, we have some challenges when it comes to participation at a local government level. And I don't think that it's because people are not interested, but sometimes it can be quite a complex system to understand, people being not always certain of where they should go, how to officially participate.
Thank you, Cathy. For me, well, certainly from a SALGA perspective, we recognize the importance of communities in this conversation, and them being part of the conversation around coalitions. Experience shows that once the electorate has gone out to make their mark and give us a result, and the results that we have seen in the 83 municipalities, is there's no outright winner. So in that case, essentially what the electorate is saying to us, what people are saying to us, is work together towards directing a response to our needs. And therefore we must keep that in mind as we have conversations about coalitions. It is ultimately about the people. And therefore the conversations must also include the people themselves. And I agree that in most instances, community views has been kept out of the loop. It is us talking amongst ourselves. And here's an opportunity for us to engage with communities, get their views, but going forward ensure that there's an ever-presence in an engagement that includes communities, because ultimately it is for their benefit. They are the ones that are affected most when there are unstable municipalities, unable to execute their responsibilities because there is no political stability. So it's a fact that we must take into account going forward. And certainly we're hoping that this conversation over the next 2 days will contribute towards the larger, bigger national conversation that is solution-driven and not lamenting on the problems. Thanks, Cathy.
Bongani, do you expect pushback at all, even from political parties, around why it is that organizations like yours are getting involved in this conversation? Hello, Bongani?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, the role of the United Nations is to walk along the country and accompany it to its journey of ensuring that there is stable governance, that the institutions, public institutions are very strong, and people have access to services. And I think recent surveys have demonstrated that only about a third of the population have trust in public institutions, and instability sometimes is one of the contributing factors to the public losing trust of the political process. So I think it's very important that we bring and amplify the voices of the citizens into this discussion. And I think the political parties themselves are now open to the idea of a conversation, because the idea of coalition is going to be, it's a reality that South Africa will have to be to make sure that it confronts and it lives with it. As its democracy matures in the country, these kind of arrangements are going to be the norm rather than the exception. And that is why we have invited the voices from business, from the communities, from labor, but also the political parties themselves to be part of this discussion. I think it is a reality that some governments that are going to be formed post every election are going to require some kind of a coalition arrangement. So we are really hopeful that I think the discussions will actually be held in a good spirit. People discuss robustly, but also listen to each other as well.
All right. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. And we certainly wish you all of the best over the next 2 days as you focus on this conversation. Bongani Matomela is the Manager for Governance at the United Nations Development Programme in South Africa. Lance Joe, Chief Operating Officer at the South African Local Government Association. And Pindile Kunene is the Programme Manager for Democracy and Political Culture at the Frederick Ebert Stiftung. Well, let's take some of your contributions to this conversation before we take a quick break.
Morning, Sis Cathy. Our South Africa, our country, we are always learning and learning. It's 30 years of democracy now. Now we are still going to learn something new. We don't have to we don't have to go across the country. We have learned. We saw it. Look at the shame that is happening in Tshwane. All those qualities, we are all going to face motion of no confidence, motion of no confidence. It's useless. We are still going to learn. You're speaking to my friend Rosbeck. Thank you, Sis Cathy. I love you, show.
Nottingham Forest are navigating a path to the top half of the table.
Has to be a goal from Hudson. Yes! There we go! Get in there! Wrap it up against West Ham United.
While Liverpool focus on a massive strategy to be on the summit until the end of the season.
Oh! That's outstanding! Liverpool have turned the game on its head. McAllister's thunderous cross.
Experience the Premier League contest between Nottingham Forest FC and Liverpool FC on Saturday 2 March at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
The book reading. Please note the views on this book are those of the writer and not of SAFM. SAFM presents the next episode of Daddy Issues. Written by Onkabetse Retabile Masobe. Read by Lerato Mvelase. Lethabo was the softer of the two. He was the peacekeeper and the peacemaker. He was a reasonable, understanding man, but he was no match for Adzani when she wanted to start a fight. Adzani didn't believe in a time, place, or a certain manner to deal with issues. For her, issues had to be dealt with there and then, significant or insignificant, whether there was an audience or not, whether the setting was appropriate or not. Adzani found herself thinking of her relationship with Lethabo, more so her behavior in that relationship. She remembered one evening when she was with Lethabo's friends and their girlfriends. It was a fun evening, a needed one. It was a night of laughter and good conversation. It lightened Adzani's mood. Work in adult